Hello and welcome to episode 26 of Celtic Rumours TV, the Bawz and Bovril podcast with your host Mark and myself Paul. Barry and Michael will join us today where we will talk and discuss Gavin from Indie Celts and Chris from Celtic Australia's opinions from yesterday's show. Ange is on his way. Former Rangers player Kevin Muscat potentially being appointed his assistant. Eduard to Leicester deal City is almost done. Lennon claiming we have a new breed of Celtic supporters. And finally, is it going to be exciting times for Celtics? Firstly, Mark for our weekly shout-outs.
Oh, thanks again, Paul. How are you doing?
Good, buddy. Good now. Can't complain.
Hopefully we're going to get some news in the next couple of days.
It's looking that way. It's looking that way. No, the shout-outs.
Oh, today, just the usual ones out to Tim Alloy, Malika. I don't know if Malika's got to Ireland yet or not, to be honest. And Richie ROH and young Ben. And a special wee shout out for Paul and his wife Veronica. It's their 5th wedding anniversary on Wednesday, so hope you have a lovely time there, lad.
Oh, God.
Welcome to some of the guys in the live chat as well. Gareth and Bobby. There's a new name, I've not seen him in before.
Mm-hmm.
I hope you enjoy what we're doing, and so I keep saying, pass the messages about, get your friends and family tuning in. Remember to subscribe and hit the like button. Thanks very much. Hail.
Celtic rumours and gossip. So Eduard looks to be leaving Celtic. Supposedly a transfer deal has already been agreed with Leicester in and around the £15 million mark. We will discuss this in more detail later on in the show. Celtic have been linked with Kenyan centre-back Joseph Okumu, who is currently playing in Sweden with Wolfsburg. Various clubs across Europe have also been tracking and interested in this player. Burnley and Cruisers are in talks with Christopher Iyer agents and are prepared to offer Celtic a deal in and around of £8 million for the when the transfer opens. Looks like Jack Hendry won't be returned to Celtic next season as his club KV Ostad have triggered their buy clause of £1.75 million. Lee Griffiths will train with Celtic for pre-season as no decision has been made on his final contract, as Celtic haven't triggered the one-year extension deal yet. As discussed in the previous show by myself and Mark and our guests, it's now looking likely that John Kenny and Gavin Strachan will be taking the role as managers for pre-season training. Due to COVID restrictions, it could mean that Ange won't be able to attend the pre-season then. What's your views at this thought? Should have John Kenny and Gavin Strachan have walked with Lennon, and should it still be left take pre-season training with the squad? Firstly, we're going to welcome our guest onto the show. With us today is going to be Barry and Michael. Mark, you get the lads.
Just got to get them on, bud.
It's strange, Mark, again that Kennedy and Strachan are still going to be involved in the pre-season thing, isn't this?
Well, as I've said before, people are getting Strachan a lot of pelters in that, but I thought he was brought in as a data analyst.
Mm-hmm.
What I've heard, he's good at doing that. I don't know if Strachan deserves as much of the blame as people seem to heap on him. I mean, see, could you name who any other person like third in line in the coaching is at another club?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? It just seems
exactly.
to be we're concentrating on what's been going on in the dugout, like the videos, but Kennedy I've spoke about 100 times, Paul, you know about that, but I just if Strachan is doing that data analysis and he's as good as people say is, I don't see a problem with Strachan still being there doing that job under another manager.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Our guests are live with us now. Barry and Michael, welcome to the show again, lads.
Right, guys, how's everybody in the chat? All right.
Thanks for coming on again, lads.
No problem.
Cheers, guys.
So Barry, start with yourself. Are we kind of a little more relaxed that maybe Ange is coming, that the deal is supposed to be agreed, personal terms agreed, and given what Gavin and Chris was saying about him yesterday, he seems a manager that will kind of interest the Celtic supporters, don't he?
Yeah, I think so. Like I said, yes, I'm getting on board with with Postecoglou now. I think, obviously, when I was on the podcast last, that everything was a bit sort of raw within the last sort of 48 hours. You know, the deal had collapsed and stuff like that. And I did say, I hold my hands up, I did say, you know, the appointment would be underwhelming. But like I say, like all sort of Celtic supporters within that time frame, we've all done our sort of research and background, and you know what, it could potentially be an even better appointment than how was that the character that he seems to be and the attributes and characteristics that he has, it could very well be exactly what we're looking for. So and listening to the guys yesterday, I thought the guys were fantastic yesterday. Gavin and Chris getting their insight and him, and it's great to know, because you can read up on somebody and you can look at YouTube.
Yes, it's to hear firsthand, like who saw him and the way he acted. It was good to hear from them, wasn't it, Barry?
Absolutely, and obviously both Gavin and Chris are, you know, familiar with him for a long time. You know, he's managed, you know, Gavin's national team. So to get these guys' opinions was great, and I thought two of them were fantastic yesterday. It was great to listen to them, and hopefully they come on again. It would be great to sort of get them back on going forward. But yeah, absolutely, you know, sort of looking forward to the appointment getting made now, and let the big fella get started, and you know, the recruitment process, and you know, we're not too far away from pre-season starting, so I'm looking forward to what's going to happen over the next sort of few days and weeks.
Michael, what was your take on the lads yesterday, given their views on Big Ange? Were you impressed what they were saying about him, and he's the manager that maybe Celtic are looking for?
Well, I was impressed prior to the guys coming on the show yesterday, obviously looking into the guy before he was announced that he was going to be getting a job a few days ago. But it was good to get guys that are living in Australia or have more views on him, so they can update, like maybe more reassurance for guys that are more local to Celtic in this country that had their doubts. And obviously there's still going to be guys that have their doubts. But surely after the dust is settled and you look into it, like he says, Eddie Howe and Postecoglou, I mean, there's really only one winner. Like if we were back before Eddie Howe was offered the job, and you had a chance to get either of the managers, I mean, there's only one manager that you would take over the other, surely.
Mark, I think that's the reason why we asked the two guys to come on yesterday, was to give the guys on the live chat and on the forum a different view, who saw Big Ange firsthand, and so they'll get to know him a bit better, isn't it?
Definitely. I don't think Gavin especially would have. I don't think he would have said what he was in the meaning. I don't think he was on there with his Celtic supporter, everything in the garden's rosy kind of hat on. It was. I mean, it was basically they just backed up what we've all read up on, but if you're hearing it for the horses kind of thing, it's a lot better than just reading articles on the website. It was really interesting listening to the two of them.
But just going by Michael, his style of play, he likes to play in fast attacking football. He likes to play the high press. Is there a bit of worry that if Kennedy and Strachan were involved in pre-season training, that are they going to get the fitness levels up to what Big Ange's style of play is, or considering what we saw of the team last season?
I don't think so. Like he says, I'm as positive as, well, I try to be as positive as possible the last few podcasts, but having they two in charge, especially Kennedy, is a serious worry for myself. And they two guys, well, I say they two, it's mostly Kennedy for me. If Kennedy, the thought of Kennedy taking the few players we've got left anyway after they're all sold and out of contract or on loan go back to the thing, it gives me severe anxiety that he's still involved in and around the club. And I understand, like it says, people in quarantine, and that I'd be very disappointed once Postecoglou and his coaching staff are brought in if any of the guys are still there. None of the guys want a place at Celtic Football Club after last season. None of them.
Barry, what's your take on the lads taking pre-season training, and with the style of football he plays fast attacking, and the lads taking pre-season?
Yeah, but I mean, that's exactly the brand of football that Celtic supporters are used to. You know, fast attack, attacking, expansive football, high pressing. That's what sets Celtic apart from any other team. You know, the quality that Celtic have is above, and I still maintain for me, it's above any team in Scotland. But it's the things like the fitness and, you know, the attitude and the high press. You know, if Celtic produce all them, they'll win 95% of games for me. With regards to the guys, you know, Kennedy and Strachan taking pre-season, one of the things I picked up on yesterday from Gavin, he did mention on a few occasions that Postecoglou likes his teams fit. He gets his teams very, very fit, and I'm delighted to hear that. Mm-hmm. But, you know, if he is, you know, we're expecting a potential appointment later on this week. I know I've said that once or twice before, but
don't jinx that now, Barry. Don't jinx that.
Said anything. Yeah. But who's to say that Postecoglou can't be involved in the pre-season? I know physically he can't be, but there's nothing to say he can't set up a programme. And if it is Kennedy and Strachan that are going to be there while he's
especially
doing his quarantine,
the technology that's here at the moment as well.
Absolutely, whether it be a Zoom call, whether it be firing over emails, look, this is what I want the team to do. Day one, I want you to start with this. You know, they should be following his instructions. So for me, I wouldn't like to think that it's maybe Kennedy and Strachan creating a pre-season programme. It might be that they just head it up and it's Postecoglou that's actually running it. That would be my ideal scenario.
Well, as we've said before, one of the things we kind of said in John Kennedy's favour is that all John Kennedy was doing on the training field is what Neil Lennon set him to do. You know, it's not down to the assistant manager to come up with all that stuff. It's up to the manager to pass it on. A lot of the times it's assistant that puts the work on the field, but as Gavin said, Postecoglou that comes on the training field a lot.
And he's involved, yeah, exactly.
Just what Barry's saying there, just if it's Postecoglou that's setting this plan, or him and his team that's setting this plan, and it's just Kennedy and Strachan that's implementing it, I don't see there being that much of a problem with it. It's when it is only really to get like a fitness programme in place kind of thing.
It's like, I was reading into him, like, I was just taking what the lads were saying about him, like he's a no-nonsense manager. It's either his way or it's no way that he won't accept players who don't kind of buy into his system. He likes wing backs, he likes wingers, he likes the goalkeeper and the centre backs to be able to play out from the back and start building from the back. But looking at last score at the moment, we don't have those players for him. So my thing is that should he be backed by the board to bring in the players he wants, and not in previous years the board's just selecting players to fill the squad, Barry?
Well, I mean, that's the thing, you know, and if it is, you know, if he does like these types of players, these brands of players, I mean, going back to the no-nonsense part, that's potentially exactly what we need. For.
Yeah.
You know, in the past, apart from potentially Brendan Rodgers, maybe going a wee bit further back, Mark O'Neill, we've kind of never had that sort of character, that big sort of character that's willing to, you know, not scared to shake things up a bit. You know, he's maybe not willing to accept what the board are going to say. And like I say, you know, I did like, again, going back to one of Gavin's quotes yesterday when he was talked about there was pressure on him from the media in Australia to bring back the boys like Harry Kewell and the other sort of, you know, I think Schwarzer was the other one. He was big enough and he was own man enough to say, well, you know what, that's not what I want to do, and therefore I'm not doing it. So he didn't bow to the pressure. He didn't bow to the pressure. But, I mean, with regards to the personnel not being there, there's no doubt about it, Paul. I've spoken on many occasions now. You know, the recruitment is needed. It's needed badly. And I'm hoping that there's some sort of things in progress, wheels in motion. I don't know who's at the back, who's behind it or who's running it, but there's no doubt about it. We're going to need players in. And the good thing is the fact that Postecoglou's coming in, he will hopefully be able to maybe not identify players as such as in names, but he might say, well, this is the style of play I want. These are the players that I like to play with, whether it be like, you know, small, speedy wingers and a big attacking striker. He might be able to identify that, and then from that, hopefully, whoever's, you know, running that side of it at the minute, we don't know who it is because we've not got ahead of recruitment, they can potentially identify players. So it's like starting with a blank canvas. But yeah, I mean, obviously, it's going to be an exciting few weeks ahead once he's appointed, and the players that do come in and the players that do leave, like we've spoken about before. So let's just see what happens.
So, Michael, it is crucial, Michael, that he gets the backing of the board for his players, Michael, isn't it? that he wants for his style of play, that we don't go back to previous years and just fill the squad?
The manager has got to, like you say, what Barry says. The manager brings in the player, and he'll know what style he wants to play, and he'll know the players that are available in the current squad that he's got. And let's face it, a lot of them aren't good enough. What I will say is, no, we've got a lot of building, but I still believe we've got a goalkeeper that can play the style of play that he wants. That's one thing I will say for Barkas. Okay, he's never been great at crosses or that so far, but the guy can at least play with his feet. So I don't think we've got to worry there, and I still think Barkas will come good for the season. But
that's one thing we didn't have under Brendan Rodgers, the way he played. That Gordon couldn't play under with his feet, but we have a keeper now in Barkas that can play that side of football as well.
Very rare, like you say, is in the world where you've got a goalkeeper that's good at everything. He's a good shot, he's good at crosses, he's good with his feet. That's when you start getting into like the Edersons and Alisson and that kind of range of goalkeeper. A lot of time when you got to goalkeepers now, you've got to have one or the other. So like, you've got to be realistic with the players you can get at your club as well. And Barkas, I think, like he says, I've said it loads of times, but I still think that he will come good for me. The more shock was when I was reading today that, or a few hours ago, that Christopher Ayers in advanced talks with Bayern Leverkusen for £8 million. I just don't understand how, with a year left on his contract, Ayers going for £8 million and Eduard's going for £15 million, but also a year left on his contract. When, in my opinion, they're equally as promising as each other in the positions that they're in. I don't know how one could be half the value of the other. You know what I mean?
Just take a score by Eduard will score your goals, isn't it? That's why they're kind of based on, I think, is it?
Eduard, Ayer will also stop goals as well. I mean, like, I think anybody that knows football, if they look at Ayer, never had the greatest season last season, but he's a player that guy. Like,
does it make a difference, Barry, actually, in the valuation of a player? Would a striker's value be higher than a defender in football?
Yeah, I mean, that it's common knowledge, but yeah, absolutely. I mean, your strikers will always be your most valuable players. Because, well, you know, the old adage of the hardest thing to do is put the ball in the net, and that's what it's all about. So there's no doubt, you know, I mean, I agree with Michael. If anything, I'm a wee bit disappointed in the valuation at Ayer. I get that he's coming into the final year of his contract, but he's a massive asset, and he's done it at Celtic. He's done it on the international stage. He is a big player. I would have been hoping for potentially 10 to 12 million, maybe for Ayer, given the circumstance that he's coming to last year's contract. But you know, the figure banded about Eduard, you know, 15 to 18 million. Yeah, I think that's a good deal. But I think generally, yes, Paul, you're bang on. Strikers always go for more money than anything. So when Tierney went for 25 million, at that point I actually did think, well, we're going to get more money for Eduard just on that basis that, you know, strikers always go for more money. Unfortunately, you know, his stock's dropped slightly and he's going into the last year of his contract. So we're probably not going to get what we would maybe a couple of seasons ago. But yeah, I mean, the price for Ayer's a bit disappointing, but I think for Eduard it's probably just about right.
Mark, that's one thing that we need to kind of stop under the new board with Dominic McCoy, is letting players slip into the last year of their contracts and letting their valuation go down, isn't it?
Oh, I think it depends a lot on the player as well. I mean, if it's one of your star players in that, you can understand why you want to keep them for as long as possible. But we need to look at so many contracts all expiring at the one time. That's been a major blunder, that, and as I said a few times about the amount of loans we had in the team. The amount of loans in the team and the amount of contracts expiring, we were always going to end up in a bad situation at the end of this year. We thought we were going to get a bit more money, as the two boys were just talking about there, but it's just kind of the norm in football, really, Paul. It's play off. I mean, when we're looking at potential targets for Celtic, we're looking at players. Oh, he's coming into the last year of his contract. He's either moving or he's signing a new contract. It's one or the other kind of thing.
So, given that the Champions League qualifiers start for Celtic on the 20th and 21st July, with Big Ange coming in, we say near enough till the end of June, just around the pre-season. Do we write off the qualifiers, Barry, now that trying to get players in during that period and time to gel, or with his win mortality, he plays to win? Do we think we have a chance under him?
Listen, I certainly would never write off the qualifiers. You don't. We spoke about it before. It's going to be very difficult, especially being in the non-champions route this season. I think we've spoken about the teams that we could potentially face, but you never write it off. You just don't do that because you never know. If we do get some players in the door, like I say, I think it's going to be highly unlikely. However, you do want European football. You want Celtic to be playing in all competitions where possible. So for me, the first part would be the qualifier that we've got. I think it's the 20th of July. We've got one of three teams: Midtjylland, Galatasaray.
Genk.
The other one.
Genk, is it? Genk.
No, it's not this. It's Rapid Vienna. If we can get through that, we're guaranteed European football. We're guaranteed group stages of the Europa League. But I would certainly never write it. Postecoglou might come in and have a big impact. The players might buy straight away into his methods, his styles, his philosophies, and you never know. If you do get the luck of the draw, you might get an easier one in the second. I mean, we're thinking far ahead of ourselves. But to answer your question, I would never write it off, Paul. But yeah, I must admit it is going to be a tall order.
That's what I was thinking. Before I spoke to the lads, and I was saying that. The main thing next year is obviously going to be the league, and with the Champions League club, it was kind of that little bit too soon. But then when the lads were talking that he plays to win, and that if, as you said, if the players buy into him quickly, you can't write it off, Marks, can you? If they buy into his philosophy straight away, if he gets the players in.
But it's still going to be a massive ask to actually get through the qualifiers into the Champions League. I think it would have been a massive ask no matter who was manager or what players were going. I still think we'll get into the Europa League and I'll be happy enough with that, considering the rebuilding we're under. Obviously, I would like to see us in the Champions League, but I'm not holding out much hope on it.
Mike, what's your take on that one?
I think Celtic as a football club, you can never write it off any form of Europe, and Europe should still be. It should still be a goal. Like it says, as a minimum, it must be the Europa League. And like it says, if they're saying that if Big Ange comes in and players if they buy into the way that he plays in that, well, if certain players didn't buy into the way that he wants to play, then get rid of them. There's too many players in that squad that call the shots, and they've been doing it for years. Like it says, hopefully this guy comes in and he shakes the whole club up from top to bottom.
So, the minute his arrival, the media are automatically going to be on his back immediately when he comes a Celtic manager, and given the surroundings around George Square and stuff like that, if they happened again, and the rivalry between Celtic and Rangers, is he the type of man, Barry, do you think that'll be able to handle all this pressure? Do you think he's already aware of it? What's going on?
I mean, for me, he certainly comes across as a character that would be more, adept to handling that pressure. And certainly, if you'd asked me the question, who do you think is more, able to handle that sort of pressure, Eddie Howe or Postecoglou? I'm thinking Postecoglou every day of the week. I mean, I'm sure we've all seen the videos. He's faced quite a lot of scrutiny in the Australian press. I actually seen a video where there was one of the press members live. I don't know if it was live on air or whatever. That actually called for his resignation to his face. So he's actually had to deal with sort of press scrutiny, and he'll get that in Glasgow. Of course he will. The press are out for Celtic. Every sort of press member is out for Celtic. Well, we've faced it for decades, So, but for me, I think, judging from what I've read upon him, from what people have said, from videos that I've watched, I would say he's adequately suited to handle these sort of situations, and I don't think that'll faze him one little bit. I think, if anything, he might even embrace
it. Mike?
Yeah, I agree. Like you say, when I heard the news that Howe was obviously turned the job down or whatever you want to call it, I was as devastated as most Celtic supporters. But as soon as the Postecoglou was mentioned and they did a bit of research on him, I was more swung the other way, and I was just glad, like it says, that we were getting somebody his quality in. And I understand where a lot of Celtic sports came from in the last week or so, where they've held the reservations and that, because, like I've said, I'm not going to sit here and say that I knew who he was prior to the announcement. But after, like he says, you just need to do some things, just do diligence and have a bit of search. And You just need to look at, like he says, the guys that have spoke about him, and you need to look at him looking at Australia to the World Cup twice, winning the league in Japan. Like he says, a lot of people in this country think, oh, well, that's easy to do. It's not really. Like, Asia's a big place.
It's going what Gavin was saying yesterday. Like, between the two leagues, the J League is a harder league, as he said. Like, there's about 10 teams in that division who can easily win that league, and for him to take Yokohama to win in the league was a huge achievement for that club.
Japan. Like, again, and I understand. Like he says, these leagues are not widely covered here, but in Japan, in that Celtic are like. I can guarantee you that the fans of the club Yokohama that he's manager, they're probably thinking to themselves right now, why is he leaving us to go there? That's what they're probably saying. No, I mean, like some of the clubs in Japan are absolutely massive. Like, and when you look at some of their fans and some of the attendances they get in some of these stadiums when they're at full capacity, you're talking like 80,000, 90,000 in there. I mean, some of the clubs are massive over there. And like I says, with the achievement of winning the league with Yokohama, and like he says, like the guys confirmed yesterday, this isn't just like a 1 or 2 horse race. Like he says, you've got like 9-10 clubs that have got a chance of winning that league every year. So the fact that he came in and did what he did was a massive achievement.
So that's all from on Big Ange for this show. Look, we'll talk about Bo when his appointment comes. So we're going to move on. Big Ange appointment coming with soon, with Yokohama's last game of the season being on Wednesday. And I'm left to believe that he'll be travelling to Celtic on Wednesday via a flight from Australia to Athens and then to Scotland to sign the deal. One coach who was in the frame of maybe Company's assistant was Kevin Muscat, but now I'm hearing that won't be happening, as it just came out the last hour that that's not going to happen. But even if it was to happen, Barry, should Celtic fans be in disagreement over him being coming to the coach because of his relationship with Rangers? Big Ange wants him. Should he be back to bring in what coaches he wants?
You know what, Paul? Everybody's entitled to their opinion. See, for me, it's not one iota of an issue. If Postecoglou wanted Kevin Muscat as part of his backroom staff, give him it. Not a problem. I mean, I think for me, it's kind of petty. It's petty for fans to turn around and say, oh, but this guy, you know, he played for Rangers. I mean, he was at Rangers for one season. I don't even think he played that much. He certainly never played against Celtic. He never even played in an Old Firm game. But, you know, this is where, you know, we need to, if Postecoglou is wanting certain individuals to come with him, to come as part of his backroom team, this is where we need to allow it to happen. Yeah, I absolutely grant it. I've read, like you, I've read that it's not going to happen. I think just in the last couple of hours it's been sort of reported that Muscat isn't actually part of his plans. I think it was maybe just the media. I think Muscat was his assistant at I think it was Melbourne actually. I think he was his assistant at Melbourne, and they've just sort of put together that Muscat will be coming as part. But I mean, no, for me, you know, those days are gone now. You know, the sort of pettiness. You know, you've seen a lot of players now cross. You know, over. You know, we've had a lot of players in the last sort of 10, 15 years that, you know, Kenny Miller, Stephen Presley, Mark Brown. It's not a big deal anymore. And for me, you know, the fact that Muscat was associated with Rangers many moons ago for one season, that wouldn't be an issue. Kenny McDowell was at Celtic for years, and he moved over as part of McCoy's.
Like I've one quote from one Celtic Twitter site that says they're calling him a cheat, a tug, and should never come near a club. Like, that kind of negativity around the club needs to stop. Like, doesn't this, you know, it needs to stop, like, trying to find these things again to just put a big shadow over the club again, Michael, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, that's what we've said this numerous times on the podcast. People will find negativity in anything. That's the problem these days. Like you said, that people will never want to be happy or look to the future, or it's always negativity with most fans and most people in the world just now. And if that guy, even though like he says, it looks like he's not coming, Kevin Muscat took the manager's job at Melbourne Victory after Big Ange took the Australian job in 2014, and he went from assistant to manager. And then Kevin Muscat's been a manager now for 5-6 years on his own. I don't think it was ever feasible that he would come in as an assistant again anyway after being his own man for so long. But even if it was the case, and what if it was?
We're getting a winner anyways. Who said, Michael, we're getting a fellow who's in managerial experience anyway. We'd be getting a winner on the coaching team anyway. If he wants to come in.
And I've seen these comments about, he was an animal and he was struggling in the park. And that was when he was playing. What's that got to do with now? Again, it's just what I've said there. It's just people finding negativity in anything. Like I said, if Kevin Muscat was coming in as assistant, so be it. I mean, I still have Kevin Muscat over John Kennedy or that.
Mm-hmm. It's still there, Mark, though, isn't it? These groups of that they don't want nothing linked between Celtic and Rangers, isn't it?
I wonder what the reaction would have been if Dermot Desmond had managed to convince Alex Ferguson to come and take over.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Alex Ferguson played for Rangers for a lot longer than Kevin Muscat did, but they'd have accepted that because Alex Ferguson was coming from Manchester United to Celtic. Again,
exactly.
To me, this is what we spoke about before. It's a wee bit of snobbery, a wee bit of looking down their nose at these other leagues, and then, oh wait, pardon me, oh, he played for Rangers as well. We'll concentrate on that and we'll crucify him for that. I agree with the other two lads here. A lot of nonsense for me. It's not as if it's, you know what I mean, Richard Gough or Ian Ferguson or that we're bringing in. Do you know what I mean? For what I've seen, I couldn't actually find out the exact number of games that he played. That's how long ago it was. Even a few Rangers sites I looked at, all they were saying was more than 25. In one of the pages I seen said he only played 22. I can remember him playing for Rangers, and I was a dirty player and a hard player. But, but as I said, he played 20 odd games for them. He's not exactly a Rangers legend, is he?
It's true. That's a good point, Mark. So look, we are going to talk more about Kevin Muscat, but as we found, I know, as Barry read and the lads read, that deal is off, and it was only, I think it was the media in Australia, Barry, that was linking the kind of two and two together. Really, then want this, you know?
Yeah, well, like I say, I mean, he was Postecoglou's assistant at Melbourne many years ago, and you know that's just the media thinking, oh, there's a link there. One will say that, you know, Postecoglou's want to bring him in as his assistant, you know. But like I say, if it had been the case for me, not a problem. You know, I don't care. I don't care if he's played 100 games for Rangers. If this is what our manager wants, and he feels he'd be a valuable addition to his coaching staff, bring him in. I'm all for it. But like I say, we're on understanding now that it was never going to happen.
But we've all been screaming as well for long enough that the manager should at least be able to pick his man.
We talk about that later on.
But then, see, when they do it, nobody's happy because it's somebody they don't like or cause you play. Do you get what I mean? There's people out there on social media and all that, no matter what you do, you're never going to please them. They're just always going to find something to be negative and moan about, and that's all that's going to happen.
So we're moving on from Kevin Muscat. Eduard is more than likely a done deal, as he's supposedly currently in talks with Leicester City over £15 million. Sorry, I was going to say euros, as being in Ireland, but the deal has now been agreed. So at the moment, we're left with two strikers in our first team for when we report back to pre-season training, and that's Ayesi and Griffiths. Griffiths, whose future is not secured yet at Celtic, as they haven't triggered his contract extension. So realistically, we're just stuck with Ayesi. Now, my question here is that with the board's recent track record of signing project signings, and do we need to stop this project signing next season do we need to bring in a more experienced striker, considering the strikers that we have left, or do we continue with our project signings, Barry?
You know what? It's a difficult one, Paul, because I don't think there's a right or wrong answer here. You know,
because they walked out as well, didn't they? You know
what? It's about the quality. That doesn't really matter how old he is or how old they are. You know, you could have looked at you know, Klimala as a project signing for the simple reason that, you know, I don't know how many seasons he'd played in Poland, but, you know, he's coming from a specific league. He hadn't scored that many goals, but Celtic saw something in him. You know, to replace Eduard, I do believe we are going to need to find a player of quality. But that doesn't, you know, whether that player be 20-year-old, 20 or 28-year-old, it doesn't really matter to me. We just need to identify the player that, or, you know, the manager identifies the player that he believes can be his number one striker, or, you know, play in the style that he plays. But, you know, I don't really think it really matters how old they are. I mean, we've spoke about it before. We don't want, you know, constant project signings. You know, like I say, if you can bring in maybe 2 or 3 into your squad, the development, great. But it's not something you want to have 5, 6, 7, 8 project signings. And that's the way we've been going for a long time now.
That's what I'm saying. Like, if we can get a good striker, we say, for 8, 9 million instead of 3 strikers for the same price. Do you know what I mean?
That's it. And you know what? I've said it for, well, God, probably the majority of the season on the forum, and it divides opinion. Now, I'm not saying he would be coming in to replace Eduard, but for me, I'd go in a second and get the boy Kevin Nisbet. And it's not just on a reaction to his goal against Holland. I've been saying it for a long time. I really like that boy. I've watched him a few times now, especially against us. I watched him 3 times against us, and I thought the 3 times he was excellent. I actually thought the best game he played was the game that we beat them 3-0. I thought he was a constant menace to us that game. But for me, you know, £4 million, £3.5 million, that would get you Kevin Nisbet. Go and do it. You know, for me. Now, I'm not saying, like I say, I'm not saying he's going to come and replace Eduard, but he's a quality striker, and you can't have enough quality strikers in your team, you know, or in your squad. He knows where the goal is. He's a proven scorer in the SPL. You know, he's now broke on the international scene. He looks like he could potentially hold his own there. Like, I think I made a comment, I can't remember if it was in the forum or if it was on the live chat, you know, if he goes in and has a decent Euros, gets a couple of goals, he's going to be out with Celtic's price range, and he's going to have a number of clubs after him. So for me, he'd be one person I'd be going to look at. Like I say, not to necessarily praise Eduard, but to bring him into the squad. We've lost Klimala. You know, we don't know if we're going to have Griffiths next season. Ayeti's got massive question marks over him. So let's go and get somebody on their doorstep. Far too many times we'll let players go.
The way he plays, I can't see him fitting into Big Ange's style of play, fast moving. You know, I can't see how he would fit in there, considering his lack of fitness, Barry. You know.
Well, no, he's never shown really that he's got a great attitude. I mean, you know, I've never seen him closing down. And like I say, if we're led to believe that that's the way Postecoglou
high press,
the high press, you know, you're going to need your strikers to work their socks off. And certainly, like I say, I'm going back to Nisbet, he does that. He works very hard. Yeah. He presses very well. But, you know, to step away from him, you know, I think Mark and a few others on the forum have mentioned, yet he's got big sort of attitude issues. And, you know, so you talk about going into the season with Griffiths and Ayeti as our 2 strikers. We don't know if Griffiths is going to be here, and Ayeti is potentially a problem. So you're then looking at, you've not got any strike. You know, Klimala's gone. Eduard is going to go very shortly. You know, we're in a tough spot when it comes to, you know, the striking department.
If we're just looking, not just the striking department, like Gavin pointed out, as every Celtic supporter pointed out, the players we need, like, surely the board as well know that these positions, because he likes to have wingers and left backs, he likes them to move up the field, and we don't have none of them. Like, should the board like give him the money and not get loan signs again, as we've seen in the past, and have project signs? That money needs to be spent wisely this season on the right players to fit his system.
I've said before, Paul, see if you're going to get a loan player in, for me the loan player's got to be at a level above what you've got, unless it's an emergency kind of, you know what I mean, somebody's got a bad injury in December and you need a loan to cover you over that period, so you get somebody in January. But it should be somebody that's at a bit of a higher level than the players you've actually got. Somebody that's maybe a wee bit, see like Kelly Anusi, somebody that was at the time he was a wee bit out of our price range, that kind of thing. So there's no point filling your squad with squad fillers, lone players like guys like John Joe Kenny and Laxalt and that. I mean, thank God we didn't buy any of the 2 of them. But it was, again, bad management and bad planning, too many loan signings, and loan signings that weren't actually good enough to be playing for us.
Like, Michael, the one thing I picked up in the lads was that when things seem to go belly up in the Celtic boardroom, they ring one club, and that one club they ring for all these loan signings or stuff like that is Manchester City. Do the Celtic board kind of lean a lot on Manchester City, given what the lads are saying? Mike? I can't get Mike. Mike, you there?
Sorry, it was my mic was switched off. not the best at trying to do two things at once, typing and speaking. As I was saying, I'm getting sick of Celtic loaning the team. You need to start getting players in that are on contracts, and I mean it's alright maybe getting one on loan to maybe help the club out in that, but the fact that our two main fullbacks last season were on loans.
I mean,
look
at the standard they play.
Disgrace.
Look at the standard they play. We've had on loan over the last couple of years compared to guys like Craig Bellamy, Robbie Keane.
Exactly.
That's the type
players who come in
and
want to make a difference, Mark. Yeah.
And it's players that probably normally you couldn't afford to bring in. I don't mind doing that kind of thing. As I say, Bellamy is a classic example, but not just buying middle of the road fullbacks. Not buying, loaning in middle of the road fullbacks. That are, I mean, realistically, Laxalt was no better. I'd say it was worse than
Taylor.
Than Taylor. I'd say Laxalt was worse than that. We could have probably, for the season, the way the season ended up, we could probably have got away with Taylor and the young boy Montgomery's were left backs and never bothered. We're backside with Laxalt.
Because like Barry's going back to the thing like that. If they want I'm saying Big Ange because I'm not going to try and pronounce his surname again for the I don't know how many times. I'm not going to say it. I said on the forum, it took I with my wife, each other 15 years. I'm only getting around to say her Polish name now. So by the time I get to say Big Ange's name, he'll be well gone out of Celtic. So we just did that. But if he's trying to build a plan, he needs players in and around Celtic for 2-3 years and not leaving every season. You know?
Yeah. I mean, and that goes for any manager. You know, any manager who's going to come in. It's if you've got a plan in place and you've got a style, you need, like I say, you need the players that's going to fit that system, that's going to fit that style. And like that, I mean, we've said it before. We've had far too many loan signings because, and each year when they go back to their clubs, we're back to square one. I think now's the time that we need to actually go and get players. You know, go and sign them, go and get permanent players in at the club. Because a lot of the times, you know, sometimes it's a risky thing to go down a loan route because some players don't buy into you. You know, they're there just to get games. They're there because they're not getting a game at their club. Like Mark said there, you know, they're not getting a game for their club, so their club don't deem them good enough to play there. So they think, oh, well, I'll go and get a game somewhere else, and they don't necessarily buy in. I mean, we have had some fortunate loans over the years. You know, you talked about Man City, you know, Patrick Roberts, you know, players like, you know, we have had some successful loans, but it's not something you should be flooding your squad with.
That's what we did this season, though. We flooded the squad. Like, did we flood it this season, did we?
That's it. And apart from potentially El Yunusi, they were all, you know, they all failed. You know, Laxalt, Kenny, Duffy, they were big failures. El Yunusi, you could say, you know, he was a success. He did bring something to the club. But, you know, like that, they've now all gone back to our clubs, Paul. So we're potentially four starters down. You know, I know Duffy sort of fell out of it, you know, halfway through the season, whenever it was. But, you know, there's four starting out year 11 now back at their clubs, and we have to replace that.
I think the best thing about Big Ange coming in, Michael, is that he's going to open up a different market for us. In Asia, Australia, all around that kind of hemisphere, that he's going to open up a different market that Celtic haven't been in.
The only worry about that is, like it says, is getting players settled. Is because it's not like they're just coming from in like Spain, Italy, and that. And a lot of people said, "Oh, well, Nakamura back in the day when he signed for Celtic, yeah, he came to Italy. He's been in Europe for a wee while." That's always the worry for me with players like that. When you sign players from even like South America or like Asia and stuff, it's always a worry for me. And like even when like that Arzani, and I understand like he got like a bad injury when he first came in that, but like he was ranked one of the best youngsters in Europe at the time, and he never even really seemed to settle as well. And it's just a worry for me, that market. Like I said, for every Nakamura you could have a Dewey, know what I mean?
Exactly.
So that is, but then people can also say that about players, and like what Barry says, if Kevin Nisbet, like I'm all for Kevin Nisbet coming in, but they'll need to get him signed now.
Exactly.
Because everybody will know, like if he goes to the Euros and Scotland's have a Euros, or even if Scotland didn't have a good Euros, but he still scores a few goals. Celtic, like it says, he'll be priced out and moved to Celtic, like
So they want to get that move done. And he's proven, like, he scored 80. I don't know how many goals he scored this season. He scored a fair amount. But if they're going to be replacing Eduard with him, then no. But like, if Griffiths ends up leaving or Ayeti ends up leaving, then it's a no-brainer to get Kevin Nisbet.
How many Big Ange play with? I mean, for all we know, he might.
He's a 4. Sometimes he switches between a 4-3-3 or 3-4-3. That's what he kind of looks like. So more likely he's kind of going to be the one striker. I don't think he's going to be a long ball manager, so I couldn't see how a big striker would kind of fit into his. Like, I couldn't see Bayo coming back now and fitting into his style of play.
I think what I like about
back for Bayo, is there?
I think what I liked about Postecoglou is I'm being brought up with wingers, and I always believe that you can't have a good team without wingers. And Big Ange seems to be a guy that likes playing with wingers, so that's why I'm looking forward to getting a left and a right winger back.
Wasn't Alex Ferguson B call for Manchester United that you can't play football without wingers? Was it Alex Ferguson that said that about the time he was in Manchester?
He said that back in the day.
Yeah,
as well. That's just my opinion. I know football.
But that was always Celtic's way of playing as well, Michael. Wasn't it? We always had fast wingers, but this year that was one of our slowest parts of the game. That we had no one to pass the ball out to the sides because there was no one there. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Ellie as well. I know that he was getting played on the left hand side, but I'm just not sure if he is really an out and out winger.
I think Elliot made a number 10, kind of number, just give him a free roll but across just behind the striker across that line.
Barry will be able to tell you as well. Obviously, he played in that as well. Like, there's nothing better than playing up front and having 2 good wingers in your team for getting the ball into the box.
You know what, and that's spot on, and that, you know, that's something that I've always noticed that we don't do, and it's we don't put enough crosses into the box, and that you know, that's a defender's nightmare. Mikey,
3 or 4 passes before we pass to get the ball in the box, isn't it, Barry?
Well, that's the thing. We always tend to come inside, or we always try to play an extra pass. You know, for see a defender, see trying to defend crosses in the box is a worst nightmare for defenders. But for some reason, that's not a style of play. Certainly under Lennon, we didn't. Even with Jamesy Forrest, you know, Jamesy Forrest has got pace to burn. But very rarely did you see him ever looking to, skin the full back and put a cross into the box.
But I was thinking then, to that end, though, I was thinking of that. Was that all down to the players being so adapted to Brendan Rodgers' style of play, to keep the ball, keep possession, keep passing the ball, and maybe they actually couldn't get, the players themselves couldn't get out of that style of play under Lennon, because he used to always complain that we spent too much time in the ball. You know, was that all, could that be down to the players playing under Rodgers, Barry?
Well, that's what Lennon said when he came in, didn't he? He didn't want to change the sort of Rodgers philosophy. He didn't want to change the style of play. He was wanting to keep that going and maintain it. And the difference being was, like, the personnel at the time. You still had Scott Sinclair in your team.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't know. I think Patrick Roberts was still there. Patrick Roberts was in your team as well.
We had the young fella. We had the young fella. What's his name? He won the French league with Lille this season. Timothy Weah, is it?
Timothy Weah, yeah. He came in on loan, didn't he? But the thing was, under Rodgers, you know, he played with inverted wingers.
Mm-hmm.
So he had a right footer on the left and a left footer on the right, and right away that kind of takes away your sort of getting to the byline, putting crosses into the box. So that kind of fell away from Celtic's game under Rodgers. Now, I'm not saying he should have done that, you know, because what he did was the players that he brought in were effective. You know, Scott Sinclair, the amount of goals he scored from cutting in onto his right foot and scoring, you know, and the same with Patrick Roberts on the other side. You know, they were effective,
mm-hmm.
But you know, it looks like Postecoglou is different. You know, I don't know if he plays with inverted or out and out wide men. If it is, then it's going to be a completely different brand of football, because if he plays with pacey wingers, they're obviously going to look to, you know, beat the fullback and put crosses into the box.
Mm-hmm.
Then, you know, it's a different. And you know what? That's so much more difficult to defend. You know, defenders hate having to deal with fast wingers. I'm not just talking about.
Exactly, they love teams that play in front of them, Barry, don't they? It's easier to defend when the team is just playing in front of them, trying to go down the middle rather than having a crossing. you know.
And that's exactly what happened last season, you know. And you know, it was evident when Eduard played. Now, we know Eduard, you know. I think we all agreed that he just wasn't up to the task last year. But Eduard's game is all about dropping into spaces, you know. And so any defender, you know, you can go back to the games against Rangers, you know, Golson and whoever his partner was, Hollander, whoever it may be. They would love the fact that everything's played in front of them. They would love the fact that they know that no one's going to potentially run in behind them. That's how I was always sort of championing getting Griffiths and the side against them, because Griffiths is the opposite. He wants to run in behind. He's always wanting to play on the shoulder and look for space in behind. And like everybody knows, defenders hate that. They can't start. So if you've got Eduard dropping into space and Griffiths looking to go through, they've then got a decision to make, and it's a nightmare for them. But yeah, you're absolutely right, Paul. Everything was played down the middle and in front, and it made it very easy because teams will just compact, they'll just flood you know, the middle areas with players, and it then makes it impossible for well, certainly last year for Celtic to break that down. They really struggled.
One player that was spoke about yesterday that will be able to adapt to Big Ange's style play, and myself and Mark were kind of in a bit of a shock when the lads were speaking to him, was Tom Roderick, that he will be able to, because he's played with him. He said he's staying at Celtic this summer to concentrate on his fitness, bring his fitness levels up. Chris was saying yesterday that he will one who will step up with Big Ange. Mike, what's your thoughts on that?
I think if he's staying, he'll still be a bit part player because his fitness has never been good. And how many seasons has he been at Celtic now?
The lad was saying that as well for Australia, that his fitness levels are the same.
He's not going to change. He's just like he's Paddy McCourt, but Australian, and probably not as good, really. Yeah, like if he'd be one for me that I would move on. But maybe with Postecoglou coming in and him being Australian, he might want to keep him, because I'm not saying that he's not got quality, but what's the point of having a player like that that's just constantly injured or unfit?
Because
a few times that people people seen it themselves when they seen him on the pitch and that. I mean, it was at times like does this guy actually train or do any form of fitness? I mean, he doesn't look overweight or that. He just looks lethargic, slow. Like he's just. Like he says, he is a good player on his day, but what is that, like maybe one good game and maybe 10, 15 bad? That's not good enough for Celtic.
His role within the Australian team was that he was the one who picked out the passes for the wingers and stuff like that. He was the one who kind of dictated the game. But considering how far the time when Australia played in the World Cup, Barry, like, does he still have the feet to do that, you think? No? Roderick?
You know what? I think with Roderick, he's such a laid-back player, isn't he? And it almost comes across like sometimes he's lazy. And there's times that he sort of dithers on the ball, took too many touches. You know, I don't know. I don't know with regards to where he would fit in Postecoglou's system, but you know, if he does play a sort of 4-3-3 and it is like fast, expansive and high pressing, I can't see where Rogic would fit into that, because he's not a guy that, you know, he doesn't seem to have a great deal of pace in terms of, you know, a real charge, you know, to close down players or to burst away from players. He doesn't seem to have that for me. Technically, he is good. He's good on the ball, but like I say, sometimes he takes one or two too many touches and he can get caught in possession a few times. But, you know, like I said, that's going to be down to Postecoglou. If Postecoglou thinks that, you know, Rogic has a future at the club and he's going to be a part of his plans and he sees, you know, where he fits in the system going forward, then that's down to the manager.
Mark, what was your take on the lads yesterday when they spoke up? Roger, well, it was kind of mostly Chris that spoke.
I was surprised myself, Paul, when they said that, but as the lads have just said there, if Postecoglou thinks he's Roger to get something he can offer the team, we've got to trust him. But
do you think maybe Roger knew something already that he said he came out when we said in the last podcast that he was staying back in Glasgow? Do you think maybe the Celtic board kind of leaned on him for advice about Big Ange as well coming in?
I don't think they would have asked Rogic about him or that. Maybe
No, would he have known about it? Like,
oh, well, it's maybe even been that as well, but because, I mean, let's face it, everybody, we were surprised when he didn't leave last year, and we were even more surprised when he came out and said he was going to stay behind this summer and work his fitness and be ready for a new season. Because I'd have had him out the door. I'd have been one of the first ones I'd have been had down the...
We had him on the list of players going, yeah.
If he's willing to come in and knuckle down, I mean, he's not that old yet, isn't he? What age is Rogic?
28.
28. I mean, if he's going to come in, a lot of it, say his fitness, I think it's a lot of his injuries that come from kind of his attitude. I'd be able to explain it a bit better. See, if you're not running about the park at that kind of intensity, like you're pumped up enough kind of thing, you're going to, to me, you pick up wee stupid knocks in that a lot more. If you're not running, like having adrenaline really flowing through your body kind of thing. But again, it's so lethargic. Everything he does seems to be in slow motion. He really is. I used to put it down to his attitude as well, because even things he does that he makes a pure arse, he just turns around with a big daft smile on his face. He never seems to get to him that things haven't worked out right and things like that. It just seems that laid back. But if he's willing to screw the nut and really, really work, I mean, because his technical ability is no in doubt. It's always been his application and his fitness, and he can't last 90 minutes. So it's up to Tom Rogic now. If he's willing to work on this, it's up to him. But he's in the last chance saloon. He's got to be in the last chance saloon at Celtic for this coming season.
Vi, what's your take on all his injuries? I remember when Sturridge was with Liverpool, Klopp said that it was more of a mind game with his head, that he was picking up these injuries. Would that be the same with Rogic, that it's in his head that he gets a small injury that's going to be a bigger injury? Or
you know, I don't know if it's in his head, but you know what, it's a proven fact, Paul, that players with sort of low fitness levels, they're the ones that pick up the most injuries. So if he's not sort of focused on his fitness and really sort of knocking his pan in to get, you know, whether that be in training or, you know, at pre-season, and you know, another example of it is Lee Griffiths. You know, Lee Griffiths' fitness levels is well documented that they're not where they need to be, and he's picked up multiple injuries. Everybody knows I'm a big fan of Greg, but he's picked up calf injuries, muscle injuries, and that's really down to the fact that you're not training hard enough. You know, the ones that are at the lower end of their fitness levels are the ones in any team. Forget about Celtic, any team. The ones that are at the lower end of the fitness levels are the ones that continually pick up muscle injuries.
What's your take on? Sorry, go on, finish what you were saying.
No, I was just going to say, you know, if the intensity levels in your training and your actual performance are at a low end, like I said, that's when you're likely to pick up your injuries. And, you know, that could have, you know, the way that the way that Rogic performs, you know, he's not one that, you know, that runs about the park. He looks very lethargic, he looks very laid back. For me, if I was to have a guess, I would say it's because of his fitness levels. That's why he picks up multiple injuries.
I can just come in there, Paul. Barry, if you're getting in for a 50-50 ball with somebody, a big hairy-ass Scottish defender, if you're not getting in there with your full intent of winning the ball, even then there's a good chance you're coming out of that with a knock of some kind. Well, I mean, you need kind of intensity, as I said, even getting in a 50-50 ball, you need to get in there and make sure you win that, or there's always a chance. If you're holding back a bit, there's always a chance you're coming off that with a Syrian.
And that's likely to happen, Mark. You know, again, you know, we all know that, you know, if you're not prepared to commit to a tackle, you know, if you go in, like you say, against a big, tough, you know, Scottish guy, whoever it may be, a big, tough guy, a big, hard man, you know, 14, 15 stone that's going smashing into you, if you go smashing in with him, you're less likely to get injured than you are if you think, oh God, I didn't fancy this, I'm not going to commit to this, I'll pull out of that. That's when you pick up your injury. If you commit, you're less likely to get injured. But, I mean, I've never seen Rogic go into any kind of tackle, whether it be full-hearted or, you know, a minor tackle. I've never seen that side to his game at all.
Just going back to one player you mentioned there, whose fitness levels have came down and there's still uncertainty over his contract, but he will be coming to pre-season training. Are Celtic maybe going to let Big Ange see what way Griffiths is and let him make the final decision, do you think, Barry, on Griffiths?
Well, I certainly hope so, because that's the way it should be. You know, the manager's going to come in. We've got a player here that, okay, I mean, his contract's not expired. There is the potential to have an option there. It should be down to Postecoglou to decide. It should be. Another guy that completely divides opinion, even on our, on the forum, he divides opinion. I've made it well known. I would be less likely to release somebody that scores the goals that Griffiths can. However, see if he was to come back like he did last pre-season unfit, I
could see. I accept that.
No manager should have to accept that. He's a professional footballer, has been now for probably 10, 15 years. Lee Griffiths, what is he, 31, something like that? There's no excuse at all to come back unfit. It's lack of professionalism. It's lack of respect for the football club.
It's a great chance for Griffiths to reinforce his place, like not just at Celtic, just really in Scottish football. There's a new manager coming in. It's a clean slate. The manager will obviously know the problems he's had with his mental health and the problems in his fitness all last season. But if a manager comes in and Griffiths buys into this, and Ange can get into Griffiths' head and get him in the right place, again, he's one of the best strikers in Scotland.
Yeah,
I agree with was it Mike that said I wouldn't think of releasing him, because for me that's a bad idea, because he's going to come back and haunt you in a cup final. I just know that would happen. But
is it Michael Leslie?
Even be give like 6 months to go. Know what I mean? We'll give you to January and we'll review the situation in January. If you've got between the new manager coming in January to get into his plans and work your way back into being a first team player, and it's a clean, just the same as it is for everybody else.
Yeah.
Postecoglou will come in here and he'll not care what people have done in the past. I can remember when Rodgers came in and asked him about Lee Griffiths, and he said he'd scored 40 odd goals he'd scored the season before, and Rodgers said, didn't he score them under me? But and I said at the time that Griffiths wouldn't be our number one striker. That was to me, that was a bit of a slap in the jaw to Griffiths, the way Rodgers backhanded the comment away. But again, it's a clean slate for everybody with a new manager, so it's a good chance for Griffiths to finally get himself and his life and his career back on track if he wants to grab it.
Is it a good idea, Michael, that Griffiths was left out of the Scottish team to stay around the Celtic for pre-season, get a good pre-season behind him?
Absolutely. The last thing Griffiths needed was going for Scotland. Like I say, Scotland have went their own way now. Just now, when they've got London Dykes and Nisbet and that's fine. But Griffiths is a must keep. Well, yeah. I'll reiterate. I'll say that a bit different. He's a must keep, like he says, until pre-season. The fact that he says, you've got to remember as well, Celtic have got the option of the year. By this stage, Griffiths could have easily turned around and says, well, nah, I'm off to sign for somebody else. He's staying at Celtic to go. He improve his fitness. And the guy scored nearly 90 goals in 170 games, nearly a goal every 2 games. You can't just get that. Like, this is what we said earlier about Eduard and Ayer, the difference in the money. Strikers that are proven goal scorers cost big dough, and to replace Griffiths, it would cost God knows how much. Like he says, to get that guy back fit, like he says, he was last season. Yes, he had his problems. He was, like he said, he let Celtic down and the fans down badly. But since he came to Celtic in 2014, to score the goals that he has, the guy deserves a pre-season to show.
Imagine what his record would be if he'd been fit and in the right frame of mind to play during the times as well.
He's just unbelievable. Like his set pieces and that as well, Mark. Like see, like his free kicks and corners and that. It's just like I think he's like he says. I'm obviously a fan of the guy, and I understand other fans saying it's time to move on and that, but how short we are in the squad department as it is, and like I'll be in a Yeti and that he's just a waste of it. He'll be away. Like Griffith, getting him fit, that'll be like a new signing next season if Celtic managed to get him in the frame of mind that he's been in past seasons. See when you talk about the Griffiths and the length of time that he's been there, see when you actually look back on it, and you said it there, Mark, think about how much he would actually score. I think Griffiths has only been like a first choice striker for potentially 2 years since he's been there. I remember when Ronnie Dyler.
That was under Ronnie Dyler. Yeah.
When Ronnie Dyler first came in, I think we played a European qualifier, Champions League qualifier across in Scandinavia, and Griffiths came on the left wing. He didn't start. I think it might have been Nadir Chiefji that started, and Griffiths was like playing at the left wing. So he's never, apart from once he got 40 goals and maybe one other season, out of 7 years, he's never been a regular starter. If he'd have been a regular number one and kept it, he'd probably be on over 200 goals for Celtic. And I just think, like I've said before, I just think you can't throw that away. You can't throw a guy that scores goals like he does away. And I know there's been talk as well about potentially being a make weight in the Nisbet deal, sweetener in the Nisbet deal. For me, I wouldn't. I'd rather have them both at the club. Personally.
But is his age up against him to get those fitness levels back, Barry? Considering he'll be 31 now.
No, but 31 though, it's not. That's not old in today's game, Paul. Players now, in modern day football, maybe you couldn't use Griffiths.
Look at Cavani.
But in modern day football, the players look after their bodies, they look after their diet. They're really home, and they realise that if they want to, have a sort of prolonged career and at a good level, they need to look after their bodies. And for the most part, they'll do. So for me, 31's not any kind of age to be sort of writing somebody off as old.
It's up to Griffiths himself to get himself right and look after his body and prove to everyone he needs this, he deserves this contract extension,
The only person that can really sort it out, Paul, is Lee Griffiths. We're saying we hope Big Ange can come in and get him in the right path in that, but Griffiths needs to want to go on that path. Just the same, anybody that's fought demons any kind will know what I'm talking about. You've got to want to do it for yourself. Do you know what I mean? It's got to be in you. You can't even get into these things and say, well, I need to do this because if I move to Hibs, I'm losing $4,000 a week in wages. That's not a good enough reason. You've got to want to do it for deep down in yourself to change your lifestyle. And 31's no age for anybody to change your lifestyle. If I could have changed mine for what I was like when I was younger to now, Lee Griffiths.
When you were at the European Championships in '67, when you could have changed your lifestyle around then.
I'll tell you, it's never too late to change your lifestyle, and it's certainly still plenty of time for Lee Griffiths to come back and get up to a peak physical level without actually. All he needs to do is apply yourself. It won't need to take any kind of great kind of. Do you get what I mean? You'll need to be months of this hard training to get back up here. Just get in and get a good pre-season training, and Barry will tell you, if you get in there at pre-season, work as hard as you can, and you will be fit.
I think what I like about Griffiths as well is how many strikers have got the package like him as well. The free kicks, all forms of set pieces. He's good in the air, and how many he's for 30 years, and he's dangerous. So I think that's what I like about him. He's got everything as a striker. He's good at everything, and that's why I says it's important to keep the guy.
So what you're saying there, when he gets the ball 25, 30 yards out, even the defenders, it's like Ryan Christie, the defenders know he's shooting. Whereas if it's Griffiths, the defenders don't know, is he going to shoot here? Is he got to try and take me on? Is he got to go for a pass here? It's unpredictable. He's an unpredictable player.
The only thing the difference is when Christie shoots, the defence let him. Because 9 times out of 10 it's going over the stand there.
And especially though,
that's what he's doing, but no, what I mean, whereas Griffiths, he's got that kind of unpredictability about him when he's playing.
Barry, especially as well, like among the leaders, like I say leaders, it's Scott Brown leaving, Oyer leaving, Eduard. You need to kind of keep Griffiths around the team to have that bit of passion from the players to actually, when the new players come in, lean off someone who's actually been at the club for a long time,
Well, I mean, he's got the experience, 7 years at the club, he's got the experience, and you know what? He's one of the most naturally gifted and goal scorers that we've had in a long time. But maybe Gary Hooper was similar in terms of his sort of instinctive goal. But Griffiths, like Mikey says, he's got so much to his game. He's very instinctive. He knows what positions to take up. He'll drop into wee pockets of space, and all he needs is half a yard, and he's getting a shot away. And I would say 8-9 times out of 10, he's getting that shot on target. We've waxed lyrical about the guy, but for me, you just wouldn't. For me, I wouldn't release him. I would get him. I'd be happy to keep him but like Mark says, it's a great opportunity for him because I think Rodgers was aware of his issues, Lennon was aware of his issues, and as a result, he was kind of starting off on a sort of negative foot.
Yes, exactly.
Postecoglou's coming in, like man, it's a clean slate for him. So if Griffiths is up for the task, I'm sure Postecoglou will give him an opportunity.
Would he accept, Mark, a pay as you play deal? Griffiths?
No, I don't think so. I don't even think that would be that's like a possibility, Paul. I think it's either this year extension or he leaves for a free.
No, the reason I'm saying it is because it's up on the live chat there that pays who pay deal for Griffiths. Like I was just saying, like would he accept that? One player that the lads on the live chat is saying that they'd like to see back, and he's in his last year of his contract as well. And he would actually suit the style of play of Big Ange is Patrick Roberts. Should we maybe go look at him again, or has he kind of performed too poorly now that he left Celtic?
He's not really done much for he left Celtic, you know. It's been a bit of a shame because I really liked him. I thought he was a great player for us, although the second time he was a bit in and out, hot and cold and that. But it just seems to be another one of the young players that had all the potential, but he's never actually going to realise.
I think he had too many chances now when Celtic asked him to come up and he didn't come up. You know, he's another, for me, he's another Fraser Foster. He had his chance to come up.
But even at that, Celtic fans, not just Celtic fans, off fans are they all like, they always seem to want people coming back. It seems to just that football fans in general, I think it's more like a comfort blanket. It's something that do you get what I mean? I can mind when Charlie Nicholas came back to Celtic and that, and I mean Charlie Nicholas was one of my first Celtic heroes when I was a wee boy. But I knew when he came back, when he came back to Celtic, it wasn't going to be like that again. Do you know what I mean? But Celtic fans and the fans always get him back for Foster there, Paddy Roberts, and there's other ones that people just keep constant. Every transfer window, there'll be posts on the forum saying that this one should come back, that one should come back. But I'd rather be looked forward than found new players.
Yeah, that's the one thing, Barry, that I've been seeing over the last couple of weeks in the media and when I'm doing the transfers, and I hate mentioning it, so I kind of keep them out, is we seem to be constantly linked to all transfer targets. Do you know what I mean? Like James McCarthy, Paddy Roberts, all transfer targets are there. As Mark said, like I want to see kind of different players coming in, players who we haven't seen, and come maybe new heroes for Celtic.
You know, it's a difficult, because again that's the sort of media playing the game, isn't it? You know, when you've got somebody like James McCarthy, who Celtic have been linked with for years, you know, from his time at Everton to his, you know, every club. When he's coming to the end of his contract and Celtic are going through a rebuilding stage, the natural thing to do for the media is to say, well, you know, Celtic are interested. I'm not saying they're not interested, but for me, I'm still a wee bit puzzled. I'm still a wee bit confused as to who Celtic's targets are and who's drawing them up. You know,
that's it, because we don't know, because like, all the talk has been on Big Ange. We don't even know if there's going to be director of football involved.
And that's the thing. And see, when I see a transfer rumour, I don't, you know, and years gone by, if I'd seen a transfer rumour, I potentially could have got a bit excited about certain ones. I could have thought ones I wouldn't really fancy. But any name that comes up, I'm kind of thinking, well, I don't really know if I believe it, because I don't know where, you know, who's working for Celtic just now in terms of identifying players. You know, his Postecoglou, you know, he's not even in the door yet. I'd be, you know, he's actually he's still got a job in Yokohama to do. So I very much doubt that, you know, he's focusing on players that he's looking to bring in. But have Celtic, you know, have they got somebody working for them? They might very well have somebody working for them, drawing up a list of targets, because they're aware that there's certain positions that they need to cover. But it's difficult for me to actually get excited about any transfer rumour just now, because I'm not convinced that any of them are. I think the latest one, it seems tonight, Andre Ayew.
Yeah, Andre. I didn't even want to, I saw, and you know what? I didn't even want to mention it because he's a free transfer and his thing, and automatically, you know, as you said there, the media jumped on that again, like Celtic are, you know, and I didn't want to mention that, like, because again, it's just the media again jumping on things that there's no link to it there. There's no major Celtic making any approach for him or anything like that. You know what I mean?
Basically, see the stories. Basically, to me, they're just like what we talk about. Basically, looking at players that could be available and maybe Celtic could look at, but they're pressing that, turn them into these stories, and then people start believing it. I mean, there's nothing wrong with people on the forum coming on and suggesting players, and we sit here and talk about players potentially that we could sign. That there's nothing wrong with that, but we're not on there saying that Celtic are interested in them. We're just saying we've looked this up, and Celtic should look at them kind of idea as a total.
The best thing I look about it, the best thing I love about it is that Celtic and Rangers are linked to this player, and Celtic have been never ever linked to that player, and then Rangers sign him down. Rangers have top Celtic to this player when we've never been linked to him in the first place, and that happened as well for a good few years.
It's went on for.
And it has, yeah.
I can remember that
for years. Like, Mark, one thing that I was speaking to the lads yesterday, and I was thinking of what they were saying. I was thinking it all last night, and how would I put it? Is that they were saying that when the Eddie Hoadie fell through, that Celtic didn't know what to do. They were in a panic stage, and they rang who they always rang, Manchester City. They gave him the name of this fella because he's part of the City group, Big Ange. They gave him his name. So that's what I'm thinking. Is there no director of football involved at Celtic at the moment? And are we going to have a director of football, or is that enough for Celtic maybe to lean on Manchester City for transfer targets through their youth system, or will Big Ange play on the ownership of the Manchester City group for players' transfers?
Well, I think any manager coming into Celtic is going to look at Manchester City youth team in that as because of the relationship between the two clubs. But going even on the past success, it would be silly not to. Do you know what I mean, Paul? It would be crazy not to look at that when you know that you've got an in to them, either through the club plus through his own connection with the City Football Group. So I don't see why there would be.
No, that's not the thing. I'm kind of putting it out there as like the reason I'm saying is that all this talk about a director of football, like, I don't think we're going to have a director of football announced.
I still think we will. Honestly, I do. I think they've got to do it. They've got to have somebody coming in to do that position. Because there's no way in the world that Dominic Mackay is going to be comfortable dealing with what Gavin's saying. Gavin totally agreed with what I've been saying for years. Peter Lowell was working as an director of football at Celtic. And they're expecting Dominic Mackay to carry that on. That will be a complete and utter disaster.
You think the fella that I named out to you again in the last podcast, the fella McGuinness, could be potentially dressed from Columbus Crew in MSA? His name seemed to have popped up again, hasn't it?
You sent me that the other day. I get mixed up the last time we spoke about him that was at Celtic, didn't I? The GAA.
Jimmy McGuinness, yeah.
I mean, it's all up in the air and it's speculation. There for a mini podcast did we sit here and think Eddie Howe was working behind the scenes, and then we thought, Fergal Harkin must be behind the scenes pulling the strings and that. But I definitely think we've got to bring somebody in that's going to run the football department.
Michael, what's your take on the lack of movement? I put it on the director of football one. You know, do we know anything that it is going to be director of football, or is it going to be the same way? It's the scouts and the CEO signing players.
What I'm worried about the director of football, how long it's taken, should I say, is I mean, if Celtic have actually said that they're going to get a director of football.
Not that I can remember, Mark. Have they actually come out and said it?
I don't think they've actually come out and said it, but apparently they hired one of the big business recruitment agencies.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like a big looking for.
Sorry there, Mark.
They came
up there. Sorry, Mark. It just came up the live chat there from Henry Cosgroves. The way it's dragging on is taking so long. It's going to be called Director of Feck All.
Well, what I will say is every top club in Europe has got to work with a director of football.
And they did come in and talk about modernising the club.
Modernising, and that's what we need to modernise if we're going to be with the times. As Michael said there, every modern club now practically has a director of football.
Just leave the manager to manage, the coaches to coach. And leave that's the problem with Celtic in the past. There's too many cooks. Just get guys in to do their jobs and leave them to do it. That sounds simple, but it doesn't seem to happen at Celtic.
Barry, what's your take on all this lack of movement, I would call it, of director of football, you know?
It's a bit worrying for me. I wish I had Mark's confidence that there is going to be one, because for me, there's no doubt about it whatsoever. Celtic need a director of football. Brendan Rodgers said himself, the size of the club that Celtic are, they need a director of football at the club. So, going back 4 or 5 months, we kind of thought that, Dominic Mackay, was announced as coming in to replace Peter Law. I think the consensus was it was then going to be a director of football followed by a manager. Well, unfortunately, we don't have anybody. And since Fergal Harkin has announced that, he won't be coming, or Celtic have announced that they've not offered him the job, there's not really been any names linked.
Do you think maybe...
Well, we spoke before, the director of football is potentially a bigger job than what Postecoglou is coming in to do.
Exactly.
But not only do we not have a director of football, we don't have a head of recruitment either. Nicky Hammond's gone.
Yeah.
So, there's somebody has to come in and do something, whether it be two separate, whether it be director of football and a head of recruitment, like we thought potentially Harkin and Richard Hughes was going to be, but we need something in there, because right now we don't have a director of football or a head of recruitment. So for me, you definitely need somebody in that role.
But do you think because he was linked to the role before and he hasn't left the club yet, and Rodgers wanted him for the position, do you think John Kennedy was being recommended for that? I'm just saying it. It's going to come out, like. Because there has to be a role for John Kennedy within the club if he hasn't left yet.
Oh,
that's what I'm saying.
You're trying to turn this podcast sour at the last.
I'm not. I'm not. But
nice wee positive chat, and
you have to come up. You'll have to come up with the fact that he hasn't left the club yet, so there has to be a role for John Kennedy within the club.
John Kennedy is getting, honestly, like you say, if you want to Google it, he is literally a barnacle. I swear to God, honestly. That's the way it comes across now. Like, this guy is like, he's always going to be here. Like,
Teflon.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, because he hasn't left.
I'd give John Kennedy a job as Hoopy. He could do Hoopy the Huddle Hound. That would do for me.
But you see the worry that I have, like, that he hasn't left the club yet. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't want him nowhere near the first team or the doctor. But I think the club still have a role for John Kennedy, considering he hasn't left yet.
I've said a few times, Paul, as long as John Kennedy's got a job at Celtic, I think
he'll stay there.
I think, that's what it's starting to look like to me. I've said that a few times.
We're moving on from all this.
Right.
So
we brought him up.
But no, I just brought him up because he's clearly going to be there next season.
But you know what? It could be that the Celtic aren't quite wanting to let him go yet because they don't have anybody in place. And it could be, like you say, there needs to be a body there to take pre-season on day one, and it could be him. So it could be that, like, Kennedy might want to go. We don't know. Yeah. We might want to say the club might say it's time for you to go or stay. But right now, it's potentially not a great time for him to move on right now, because we actually don't have a manager in place at the minute.
It's just worrying, like, because it took us so long to get the manager situation sorted, which still actually isn't sorted. Like, and if we're going to get a director of football in, I don't think that's going to happen this season, maybe next season. But the way things are, I just can't see it, Barry, a director of football coming in.
You know what, Paul, I kind of share your worry, to be honest with you, because the director, like I just said, the director is a massive job, and a director of football,
it needs to be right.
Neil Lennon left, could have been identifying targets. Like, they oversee the recruitment, they oversee the youth development, everything, the manager's side of it, that they help to recruit managers at times. But, we don't have that there. And like I said, the season's almost upon us, and we don't have anybody in place. Now, if we appointed somebody tomorrow, like we just said with Postecoglou, he's coming in with very little time to prepare for the start of the season. If you appoint a director of football tomorrow, with the job that they have in hand, that's even less time, because they've got so much more to do. So I am a bit concerned. I must admit that there's nobody in place. There's not even any.
There is, and there hasn't been an announcement. We don't know.
If that's the case, I'm hoping. This is a familiar phrase. I'm hoping that somebody's working away in the background. I've said that plenty of times in the past sort of month or two. But, it's a wee bit worrying for me that there's nobody been appointed as of yet. And like I say, it's not a case of, Harkin's not coming, but so-and-so else, somebody else. There's no really names either. But Celtic always play their cards close to their chest. So it might very well be that they have somebody lined up. But we're leaving it very, very late in the day to appoint somebody if it is the case.
Anything to add to that, Mark, before I move on?
No, I'm fine, Paul.
So we're going to Mike. You all right with everything there?
Yeah, I would rather just move on.
So former Celtic manager Neil Lennon has come out guns blazing, insisting the club has a new breed of supporters and that he has nothing in common with them. He stated that after the Ross County defeat in the League Cup last season, where players were verbally abused, attacked by supporters, and that the first team was very upset considering how the success of this team in recent seasons. Barry, is he right here saying we have a new breed of supporters within Celtic that don't recognise, that haven't been around for the 90s, the bad times of Celtic, and they've only witnessed the 10 in a row seasons?
Yeah, I mean, he is right. There's no doubt about it. That, you know, there's a genuine.
You there?
They've won quadruple trebles. They've won cups. They've done, you know, decent amount of things in Europe. You know, we've had a couple of decent European runs. However, I don't think I don't agree with Lennon's statement. You know, he was looking to blame everybody but himself. Now, I've been on this podcast. Yeah, I mean, I've been on this podcast, you know, many times praising Neil Lennon. You know, I am a Neil Lennon fan. I think if he'd have, you know, started off his statement by saying, "Listen, I realise that, you know, I got it wrong on a number of calls last season. However, you know, because I certainly don't justify, you know, because he went on yesterday about missiles being thrown at players, you know, after that Ross County game, and certainly don't condone any of that. I really don't, you know. But however, you know, the reason was a multitude of poor results, poor performances, lack of effort. There was a big combination of what was happening on the park, and that was down to Neil Lennon and the players. You know, so I certainly don't condone any sort of the, you know, throwing barriers, throwing missiles at players and buses and cars and that's there's no place in football for me. But I was a bit disappointed in Lennon's statement because he seemed to really try and deflect the blame away from himself. Where for me, you know, the man that Neil Lennon is, I would have liked to say, listen, you know, I got it wrong on a number of occasions last year. The players got it wrong. We're sorry that it worked out the way it does. However, you know, the players were really affected by, you know, protests and missiles being thrown. But like I say, when I read the statement, I thought you've really deflected it away from yourself here, Neil.
Michael, what's your take on Neil Lennon's comments about the new breed of supporters?
Like he says, he's just again. I mean, Neil Lennon, like I always liked the guy and everything he did, like on and off the field and that. But like you say, he's a bar. He's pushing it with a lot of supporters with some of the comments he's saying. Like, I think he'll do anything to deflect anything away from his performance. I don't agree with some of the protests and like people like hurling missiles and buses and that. That's different. But he did not like fans like voicing their opinion in any way. And if he was doing his job properly and stuff, then like you say, that's what I mean. And I've said in the past, it's not about the way Celtic of about Celtic with the quadruple treble, and that'll never be seen again. Unbelievable by the club. It was about the last season, about the way it happened. It wasn't like it was by 2 or 3 points or whatever, and it was the total collapse from the start of the season right to the end that the fans were venting about. It wasn't just because of no one a cup and they're just used to winning or anything. That wasn't what it was about. He was just trying to deflect what he's been doing for months.
Mark?
I don't think his actual wordage was very nice, for the want of a better description, like a new breed of Celtic supporters. I wouldn't have said that, but in a way I can see where he was coming from, because there is a lot of younger guys than us that have only known Celtic to really be winning there. The other night we were talking about Tommy Burns, and I can remember Marion Beat as a manager than a player. So these guys that were like 12, 13 and just starting to understand football, all they've known, they're 23, 24 now, all they've known Celtic dominating. So you can see we've been through it, why the fans were upset, and there is a kind of new, kind of modern version of Celtic supporter, I suppose, because, I mean, let's face it, we're off what they call Celtic Daz, aren't we? We're off all, really. But again, it was just deflected. Nothing was Neil Lennon's fault. That was just basically the gist of it, and I should have just kept the show, not said it. There was nothing.
Yeah, my take on this,
it added nothing to it. He never he never told us these problems that he was hinting about all season. He never came out and said what they were. He never told us anything that we didn't know, apart from have a pop at the fans. That was basically done in that.
I talk on this new breed that he's saying is like these supporters would have found out about Celtic through their fathers or their mothers who actually loved the club, and they would have known about the club's history as well. So this new breed he's going on about, like, these would have learned about the history of Celtic anyway from their parents, Barry. Do you know what I mean? You know?
So, say that again, sorry, Paul.
I said, like, these new breed of supporters that he's saying, like, they would have learned about Celtic through their parents and their love for the club through their parents, and they would have known about the club's history. Just because they didn't witness it doesn't mean they didn't know about it. Like, Lennon the same, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. However, like, you know, I guess unless you've lived through something and, you know, actually felt the emotions of something. Well, you know, we've all heard about, you know, Celtic winning the European Cup. Only Mark can tell us how it felt that day. He was there, Leo. But, you know, all joking aside, you know, I would have, you know, I never felt that emotion, but I've spoken to guys who have. You know, I've spoken to guys who were. I actually know one guy who was at the game, you know, and he speaks about it. But I never felt that. And I guess you're absolutely right, Paul. You know, through, you know, their parents, grandparents, they'll be able to tell about times and of certain players that played and how they saw. However, you know, like I say, your younger and I'm talking about your really younger generation. You know, your late teenagers, your early 20s. All they've lived through is success. You know, they've been used to trophy after trophy, you know, league win after league win, dominating against Rangers, etc. And now this season, which went the way it went, and like Michael said earlier, it's not just a case of we were pipped at the final post, because I'll bet you any Celtic fan would have not accepted it, but you know, well, maybe you would have accepted it. You know, if we
come to terms with
by a point on the last day, we went toe to toe, and things just didn't quite go our way, or whatever it may be. You just take them on the chin. We've had to do it in the past. We'll have to do it again. You take them on the chin and you say, move on. You know, you gave up a gallant effort. It was a good fight to end. But like Michael said there, it was just incident after incident, you know, from the start of the season.
I remember growing up, like, and watching the helicopter Sundays, like, you know what I mean? You know, like, they were nervous times that these fans didn't haven't been wrong to see.
Yeah, they've, you know what, and we've had it both ways, haven't we? You know, we'll live through the pain of Helicopter Sunday, you know, when we were at Fir Park and they were at Easter Road, and then we had it the other way, you know, when at Tannadice a few years later, when Venagura Hessling and Skpe won on the fit, and you know, the feelings and emotions are incredible. You know, they're absolutely brilliant. But like I say, for the last 9 years, 10 years, we've been dominant in every spectacle of the game, you know. Like I say, winning title after title, you know, quadruple trebles, like you say, I'll never be paralleled, I'll never be matched. But some of these younger guys, you know, I'm not dissing them. I'm just trying to explain my view on it. You know, they've not experienced this, and they've not handled it well. They've not accepted it well, and that was. I mean, listen, it wasn't just younger guys. There was other people there that, you know.
That's what I'm saying. There was older guys. Yeah, there was. Like, it wasn't just.
As we speak about as well, it's all on social media. I mean, the times, imagine what social media would have been like when Rangers were going for 10 and do you know what I mean? Times like that. It's a different, again, back to the Celtic Dad stuff, it's a different world now. Do you get what I mean?
You know what? And technology.
These young folk, to me, they've all got a sense of entitlement. They're allowed to say what they want to say with no repercussions, kind of thing, or you're against this, that, or the other kind of thing. It's a totally different world, and people.
It's just like Mark saying, like, that the modern day's football, and that's the way the modern day football is, and that Lennon and Celtic haven't evolved into modern day football. Do you know what I mean? They don't recognise these modern day fans and the way they do things now through social media and stuff like that. You know.
Oh, well, Neil Lennon knows. Did he not get kicked off of Twitter?
It's like Mark says, though, you know, like, see, if you go back, you know, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, your only sort of access to any sort of story was one sort of newspaper, or you know, one newspaper a day, you know, multiple newspapers. That was your own. See now, you can check your phone every 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Like, I think it was Gavin said yesterday, and I'm sure 90% of Celtic fans are the same. You wake up in the morning, I switch on my phone, I go on to Celtic News now. There's been umpteen stories between me going to my bed and me waking up in the morning. And you check it you can check this system every 10, 15 minutes. There's a new story. You know, and that wasn't available back then. You got you got a newspaper that you were able to, you know, thingy once a day, and it maybe had an article or two about your football club. That's all changed now. You know, that's all changed.
I remember growing up, like we didn't have Sky Sports back then, and we used to have to tune in on BBC One Scotland on the audio on the television. When that used to be out years ago, and listen to the matches on then, like, you know, do you know that different times now, like, isn't it?
I remember back in the day when I used to go on teletext. And that's
in the green lighting, the teletext. So another statement that came out by Lee Lennon is that he wasn't able to bring in his own backroom staff, and that it was a major downfall in his development of Celtic, that he didn't have a shoulder he knew to hold on to. Lennon wanted to bring in his own backroom staff with Parker coming, which the board dismissed when he was approached. We spoke about this before. Was that a major issue that Lennon wasn't left bring in his own backroom staff, Barry?
You know what? I'm probably intend to agree with Lennon. I mean, it was very different from his first spell at the club. You know, when he first got appointed, like I said, his first spell, he brought in Johan Mjalbes, he brought in Gary Parker, he brought in Alan Thompson. You know, this time round, he wasn't given that opportunity for whatever reason. I don't know why, but he wasn't given that opportunity. And I listened to, I think the guys might have touched on it yesterday. I listened to a podcast, it was actually a Celtic Huddle podcast, and Tommy Johnson was on it, and he says Neil Lennon approached him to come to the club. I think it was in a scouting capacity, and he was refused that as well. So, in some ways, I guess he was sort of restricted. What sort of part that played, I don't know. How that impacted his plans going forward, I don't know. But I don't think there's any doubt that he wasn't given, you know, I don't want to say he wasn't given the support, but certainly he wasn't given the support in terms of the people that he wanted at the club, the people that he wanted to lean on. And the people...
You need your own men around you too, Barry, don't you, as a manager, don't you?
Well, every manager does, don't they? Every manager, well, potentially, you know, they get to pick their backroom staff, and it's always what suits them. You know, they've got a working style, and if they work well with somebody and they bounce off each other, or somebody that even can, you know, you get relationships, managers and assistants that, you know, sometimes a manager will have one opinion, assistant have another, and the manager actually thinks, you know what, your way's better than what mine is. He never got that. You know, he got John Kennedy, and I don't know if this is right, but I was led to believe, you know, John Kennedy suggested Strachan. I'm sure they did their badges together.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that because just after that, when David Duff left, Celtic went away and appointed Gavin Strachan, and the quote from Neil at the time was, "We're delighted to bring Gavin to Celtic, as the club have been tracking him for a long time, and we're delighted with his appointment." I don't think Lennon had anything to do with that appointment. I think that was more Kennedy as doing his badges with him. Do you think?
The only thing I'll say about Lennon and the backroom staff, and he wasn't happy. But if he wasn't happy, then how did he take the job?
That's what I'm saying. That's the next question. Why did he walk?
He agreed to the circumstances, so he's just blamed to anybody. Like, he could have turned around and says, "Look, well, if you can't get me my backroom staff, then okay, then I'm just going to need to move on."
But Chris made a good point yesterday, in that, right? That Lennon knew it was going to be his last time ever joining Celtic as manager. It'll be his last time, and he said, "Doesn't matter, I'm going to take the job anyway." That was a good point by Chris. I think that's what Lennon did.
I definitely think that. I think Lennon just accepted the job, and then after, he probably didn't even, people are saying, why accept the job if you're not being allowed to do certain things your own way? I think he took the job, and then after that has come out, he's not getting his own way, and he's been using that as an excuse. Well, for me, he's only got himself to blame for that.
Do you think he had any involvement in Strachan's appointment, or was that done without his agreement, just acceptance?
See, that's a hard one. As I said, I've never seen, I was going to call him Gordon, Gavin Strachan as an out-and-out coach. I think where there's data analysis. So I don't know why he was brought in the capacity that we think he was brought in, and to replace Duff, who was a coach. Why replace a coach who had what I thought was a data analyst? So I don't know about that, but I mean, I've said that he's meant to be good at what he does, but I suppose even John Kennedy, maybe even Gordon Strachan's.
But do you know what was brilliant yesterday? That the lads from Australia and Gavin living in Sweden, even they noticed how much time he spent on the laptop, and even they called him laptop Strachan. Do you know what I mean? You know?
That is what he does. He's see the bra. I don't know what they're actually really called. The bra things that the players wear with all the electronic stuff in them. He sits and reads all that data as the game's going on, and this is meant to so he can tell what's working on the part and what's knowing things like that. So he is there basically. That's what he needs to do: sit and analyse this data that's coming in, and then pass it on to the manager. Do you think Neil Lennon knew what he was talking about?
That's what I was just about to ask you. I don't think, because I don't think Lennon's a modern day football. He's still stuck in the Martin O'Neill era of football. Like the same as Jose Mourinho's, he plays the old style fashion football. I don't think Lennon was interested in any of that stuff that Gavin Strachan was bringing to the table, Barry.
You know, I've got my own sort of theory on it. I've got, and it might be right or wrong. I don't know. I've not been given any information, but my theory was when we were led to believe that it was John Kennedy that brought Strachan in. My theory was that John Kennedy was going to be the heir to the throne, and he was going to be taking over the mantle from Neil Lennon. That was my, because I thought if that is the case, and you're allowing sort of John Kennedy to not dictate, but to suggest, look, I think we should bring this guy into the coaching staff. I honestly thought that, you know, if Celtic had gone and got the 10 in a row, that Neil Lennon would have potentially moved on and John Kennedy would have been in, and this was him starting to build his own backroom staff. That's just my own theory on it. But I personally don't believe that Neil Lennon was involved in that. No. I don't believe that we tracked this guy for you know, was he prestigious? I don't know. Before Celtic were lit, I mean,
Brentford.
With Clough, yeah, he was involved with Clough at the time. Yeah, Brian Clough.
No, it was Peterborough.
Peterborough with Clough, wasn't it? Brian Clough, wasn't it?
No, Gavin Strachan.
No, Brian Clough.
No, his son. What's his son's name?
It's Darren Ferguson, wasn't it?
Darren Ferguson, yeah. Sorry, Alex Ferguson, yeah. Darren Ferguson.
Yeah. Peterborough are a well-run club. I mean, there's that. Even Tony came in. They've already replaced him. The guy that replaced Tony has been banging in the goals as well this season. So Peterborough are a well-run club for their size. And again, what was Strachan's role down there? That's back to what was he actually doing.
So there was a guy Clark Harris that brought in that scored 30 odd goals, and he's away to go for big money as well.
So just going by what Lee Lennon said, that he wasn't left in heritage back. It's vital that Big Ange just bring in his own backroom staff, Barry. It's vital that Celtic let him bring in the backroom staff he wants, that he trusts and he knows.
Yeah, I mean, for me, and that goes for any manager that's appointed. Though I'm always a big believer that you should let them put together their team, because they're there on merit. You know, you've identified that this is the guy that you want as the manager, and sometimes, you know, managers work well because of their backroom staff and their first team coaches. You know, Brendan Rodgers got to pick multiple people within his team. But yeah, I mean, there's no doubt about it. For me, you know, not only that, Postecoglou, he's coming into another culture. You know, he's moved from Australia to Japan. He's coming into a European culture now. So for me, it's important that he's comfortable, and, you know, if that means surrounding him with the people that he trusts and the coaches that he's worked with before, absolutely, give him the go ahead to get these guys in. Not a problem.
What extent do you allow that to happen? I mean,
I think he should be left big in.
As I said, no, I think I totally agree. A manager should be at least allowed to pick his main assistant. But see, maybe as the circle spreads out, the ripple effect kind of thing. To me, a lot of them should be under the director of football's role to a point. Do you get what I mean? I don't think the manager or head coach should be worrying about who's running the sports science side of things. That should be up to the director.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. No, for me, I think it comes as a 3 for me. Just my opinion. I think a
manager, assistant, and first team. Yeah.
But like I said, and I'm not suggesting John Kennedy should be part of it, but there's not a problem having somebody else in there, you know, as part of your coach. I mean, you're not restricted to just, you could have like 2 or 3 coaches. You know, a lot of teams do. I think Brendan Rodgers had a good few people within his.
Yeah, Tory, the fella Davis, yeah.
For me, if Postecoglou, if he's coming in and he wants an assistant and a coach, I would grant him that. But like I said, there's no problem like a director of football appointing another first team. I wouldn't want them keeping Kennedy on. I don't think it's any secret about that. But you know, if there was somebody else to come and actually, we think, you know, it might benefit you having a Scottish coach or somebody that maybe knows the league or somebody that maybe knows the club. That's not a problem. But I would like to think a manager, an assistant, and a first team coach. I would grant him that.
Mike, you're taking that?
I'm a believer that all the managers combinations like all these that's got to happen. I think they messed up we're in. Like, I'm not even going mentioning his name because he just gets his eye right. It's time for like people to move on, and just the guy like he says, the guy will bring in his own stuff anyway. I don't think he'd take the job getting dictated to just based on what the guys were saying yesterday about him, and just even looking into the guy. He's got that many accolades and league title wins and that. Then he'll decide who he wants to be there, in my opinion.
Mark, just going on what something you said here, like that the manager shouldn't be looking at certain departments within the backroom staff. One department, in my opinion, that needs to be sorted out, and maybe Big Ange needs to look at being his own person there, is the sports science, because as I spoke in previous podcasts, the fella Tim Williamson is there, and he was demoted twice.
But see, for me, honestly, Paul, that shouldn't be, no matter who the manager come in is, for me, that isn't under his remit. That should be chosen to the football and CEO level. Because as I spoke about, but no one, the next manager to leave and rip the hearts and guts out off again. So there are certain positions for me that it's up to these guys, are professionals. It's up to them to find a work. Adapt to him.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
You don't want a manager coming in and saying, right, I want put me seem to we're kind of getting down the road with Eddie Howe. I want this boy here, this boy there, this boy doing that. It can't be that. The club's got to, as the 2 guys said there, that the manager's got to be allowed to pick certain people he trusts. And then after that, it's got to become like club decisions, the best people we can afford and find to do the job.
Before we move on, lads, and for a short finish, before I go to Michael to say something to the live chat and stuff, from Wednesday, we're expecting an appointment maybe Wednesday, Thursday, because supposedly after the Yokohama's game Wednesday, he's on a flight to Athens, he's going to be in Glasgow, Is it like exciting times, lads, that we get signings in and we get the deal done as soon as possible? Barry?
Oh, without a doubt, yeah. Without a doubt.
You know, I said I'd finish on a high this week instead of a downer, which is a big change for myself.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, absolutely. You know, like I said, we're creeping closer and closer to, you know, the pre-season starting, and we're not too far away from the Champions League. So the sooner, you know, Postecoglou comes in, then the sooner we start to get the deals done over the line. And like I say, it's hopefully going to be an exciting time in the next few weeks, and we'll see plenty of activity and plenty to talk about on future podcasts.
I think everyone's going to be excited the first signing, the first player that he signs, and there's going to be excited that eventually, gradually, we have players coming in. You know, that the fans will start getting excited, and hopefully this negativity around the club starts slipping away. Michael?
I think the manager's first couple of signings will basically set the tone for what's going to happen. That's what I think. I've said this since it was rumoured, and I'll say it again. I've just got massive confidence in the guy, and I've got for once I've got a bit of a good feeling. Like it says, until he's actually standing, whether it's in a hotel room because he's in quarantine or whatever, but until it's actually on the actual website, then I'm still going to hedge my bets, because after what happened to Eddie Howe,
Exactly. Barry, just before we move on, do you know anything around his pro-license thing? They're saying it could take several weeks for that to be reviewed through this process it goes through.
You know what? Obviously, there's media outlets been in touch with UEFA and stuff like that, and they've explained that Celtic are put in for an exemption and it could take several weeks. You know what? They might be right in terms of legalities and terminology. I don't think it's going to affect the actual process now. I think he will come in and he will take training. He'll do his quarantine, he'll take training, and he'll have to sort of put his stamp on things. There might very well be an issue in terms of he needs to, go through his license. I think he'll do that on the job. I think Celtic will get the necessary means to get him in the job. I don't envisage it being a.
Man, you have turned your camera on.
I don't know.
That's Barry. I turned the video on.
Is it me?
So, just. No, it's off now. Just go by that, so.
But Dr. Barry, that lump looked a bit dubious there, son. I don't even know what part of your body it was. I was
Barry,
there.
Mark, would he be able to still take during the Celtic take trade and stuff, even though his pro license hasn't been agreed? Mark, can we still expect him to be in and around Celtic? Yeah.
There's ways and means around that. We spoke about it. Gerard came in without his licence, even gave Martin O'Neill. I found out Martin O'Neill was at.
I think, but the issue with the thing I'm reading is that because they were managing in Europe and they had experience in Europe, and the issue was there's a slightly thing that he's never been in Europe, and that's.
I don't know. Maybe Michael will know this. His wife's a nurse. See if Michael's wife went to work in America, would their qualifications be recognised?
Mike?
As far as I believe, in America, no, but in Australia, yes.
Oh, right. I was just meaning, surely these skills and your qualifications, there's some kind of transferability. The guy working as a coach.
That's what.
30
for 25 years, they're saying sure he got that, and because he was international football as well, that they were in the World Cup and he coached in the World Cup, that his experience should be.
Surely needs to be covered with a FIFA thoughts, kind of coaching badge to managing the World Cup.
I think Celtic Barry would have kind of known this as well, and would have been looking into this already with his appointment,
Well, you'd like to hope so, but I really don't see this as a stumbling block. I think what you're going to find is over the next sort of days and weeks, Postecoglou's going to get appointed very soon, as far as I'd like to believe. You're going to get multiple stories in the media saying, "Oh, he can't do this, and he's not going to be able to be in the dugout." That I just think you're going to get a lot of negative stories around this issue. But for me, I actually don't see it as an issue. I think he'll go about his business as usual.
What I'm reading is that he'll get the exemption, right? That he'll be able to coach, but he'll be able to coach for 3 years, and within those 3 years, he'll have to take his pro license within those 3 years to extend his career in Europe. That's what I'm kind of reading around the things, that he'd have to take the license.
Yeah, I mean, if that's what you need to do, if you have to have a UEFA Pro license to be manager, and he will do that. The Celtic will get onto that. He'll get through his license. I don't think it'll take him 3 years. However long it'll take, he'll get through his license. It's not a problem. It's obviously just a bit of paper that's not recognised because he's never managed in Europe, but I really don't see it as a stumbling block. But I think what you will see is you'll probably see multiple stories across the mainstream media saying that it is a stumbling block, and he's not going to be able to do this, and he's not going to be able to sit in the dugout, he's not going to be able to manage. I don't think it'll be the case. I think he'll just go about his business as usual.
Mm-hmm. Folks, before we move on with and close the show, I just want to hand off to Michael there for a few minutes. Michael would like to say something about a charity match that he's hoping to organise. Mike?
Yeah, what it was is I was hoping to obviously I spoke to Mark and Paul earlier about this, and I'm wanting to put on a charity football match, mostly guys from the website and basically the podcast, and I've reached out to a couple of professional football clubs in Scotland, and I've had a reply from 2 clubs that are hoping to put on the venue. So I'm hoping to get together 30 guys that are willing to give up a day of their time to play in this charity match and raise some money for the NHS. And it'd just be good to get, but hopefully, like I said, I want to get 30 guys or 32 guys, possibly, like I say, 11v11 with 4 or 5 subs each. And like I say, hopefully there's guys on the forum that would be interested in participating. I'm looking to put it on in the next 4 to 8 weeks, so there's plenty of notice as well. And I'm hoping to hear back by Friday by one of the football clubs' dates and possible, like it says, it's all like it says until I actually get dates from the actual football club, and I don't want to really say who it is in case it falls through, but it's a reasonably high-profile Scottish football club, and they're willing to host the event based on dates. And when I get dates, I'll let Mark and that know and get posted on the website. But if guys can let myself, Mark, or Paul, or anyone know on the site that they're wanting to participate, it'd be great, just so I can get numbers.
Perfect. Unfortunately, due to COVID regulations, unfortunately unavailable. But folks, that's all from tonight. Before we go, I just want to ask you to check out Gavin's website, the Indie Celts, who was on the other day, and check out Celtic Australia's football website and Twitter. For myself, thanks to Barry and Michael for coming on the show. Thanks to you on the live chat. For myself, thanks and good night. Mark?
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Mikey. And back again for and thanks everybody for the live chat. Hope you enjoyed that again, lads. Episode. Good night. God bless.
Mikey, if you're still on, mate, I'm up for that. Count me in.
Are your knees all right, Barry? Are you sure?
If she's anybody listening,
I showed out there if Mark can get it on the YouTube channel. I unfortunately I can't be there, but I'll do a watch along and I'll commentate on the match if we can get a screening. All right.
I'll sort something like that. If anybody wants to get in touch over the game, there's a link in the description. You can get in touch with me through that, or you can even email me ed007@live.co.uk. So something to get interested in, lads. So hope you are on to that. Good night. God bless.
All good. Cheers, guys. Bye.